All right, here we go with chapter 5. This is the Slav Exchange chapter. How are you doing, Jesse?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Good, thanks. And one thing I wanted to mention with this chapter right off the bat. After d4, d5, c4, we're recommending 2 c6. One of the ChessGoals members mentioned that if you want to play 2 e6 in this position, you can avoid this whole chapter, the Slav Exchange. But keep in mind when it comes to the later chapters, the English and the Ready chapters, our lines are based on this c6 d5 setup with the transposition to the Karo. In one case, the Panov lines, and we actually included, this is a recent addition, Jesse, the full Panov video with this course. So I included that in here, so if you play our Slav defense and you transpose to a Karo, you have that whole chapter too. But just something to keep in mind. You could play 2e6 here if you don't like the looks of this chapter.
Yep. So the move order we're going to be covering is C6. So pretty much the whole course is based around this type of pawn structure, and E6 to come later. So it doesn't make sense to go back and retroactively fix everything or change everything, but it is an option. But so for this chapter, we're looking at the exchange Slav. So C takes, and we're going to take back with the C pawn. Now, the exchange Slav has a reputation for being very dry and boring, but Matt has some wonderful lines to make things exciting, and we're going to go for very dynamic play here as early as humanly possible. So we're going to, after the exchange happens, there's a few moves we're going to look at. Knight c3, bishop f4, knight f3, and this sneaky move, bishop g5, which we actually recommend in our d4 course. So we're going to have to tread lightly here so we don't give away like double prep.
Yeah, and I only included that line because we recommend it. It's rare enough that it wouldn't normally make the course, but I have to at least show something there. All right, so let's start with the most popular move, knight to c3. This is a very flexible move. And look at this recommendation here. So I have the Lichess opening book open for club level players, rapid and classical only. So that's what I kind of based a lot of our move popularity on for the white side. Rapid, classical only, club level players. At this point already, black is winning 53%, white 39%. So we're playing this very dynamic variation right off the bat. And we're saying, okay, white's playing the exchange Slav. They want like a nice, simple game with a real slight advantage that they can just grind us down. We're not going to give them that. So similar to other ChessGoals lines that you'll see, we like to play something slightly offbeat, and we like to play for the initiative, keep winning chances on the board. So we're going with e5 right away here on move 4, and taking those exchange Slav players out of their prep.
Yep, so this isn't an objectively great move, but it's solid enough to be dynamic and something that we're going to play that's going to really, like Matt said, hopefully throw white off their game. They're looking for a safe, easy game. Not going to happen. So we're going to look at a few moves, d takes, e3, and just simply knight f3. The most critical line is to take the pawn. This is I think, maybe the only one that really keeps a strong advantage for white. And we are going to respond, I bet you've guessed it, by pushing through, pushing past, and asking what they want to do with this knight. So there are a couple options. They can very sadly go back to b1, or they can play a little more actively and come to e4. So let's start again with e4. And how do we proceed from here?
So our recommendation is going to be the most popular move, queen to a5 check. And this one's pretty easy to remember because what you're doing is you're checking the king and you're attacking the e5 pawn. So a nice little fork. And the plan is to capture on e5 next. And what's going to happen after white blocks, we'll look at bishop d2 and knight d2 here. We now take the pawn. And now let's compare the minor pieces. So white has knight and bishop still on the first rank. The bishop on f1 is trapped in. The knight on e4 is currently attacked, and the bishop on d2 is not sitting on a great square. We have all 4 pieces on their starting squares, but both bishops are ready to come out very quickly, and the knights are also ready to come into the game. So from the minor piece perspective, I think we're at least equal. Our queen's more active, causing some issues for white potentially. And this pawn on d4 is kind of double-edged. It could become a weakness, but it's also trying to slow down white's development. Like in some cases, it's not as easy to play e3. It's controlling that c3 square where this knight wants to sit. So yeah, kind of a nice double-edged game. And like Jesse said, Stockfish eval, Stockfish is going to like white here, but it's going to be hard to play for our opponent.
Yep, and another thing to add too is that white's knight is hanging, so they need to spend another move to figure out how they want to defend that. They could play a nice ugly move, f3, or probably just retreat the knight since there's not a super convenient way to defend the knight. So knight g3, saving the knight, and we're going to just develop. Knight f6, I see bishop c5 is also a good move. But knight f6 scores a little bit better, and sometimes you want to play by opening principles and get your knights out so you can stay a little more flexible with your bishop as well.
And then knight f3 is the main move here. Attacking the queen makes a lot of sense. And now queen to d5 for black. And what we're doing here is we're keeping the queen centralized, and our plan is to play knight to c6, followed by bishop to d6, and get castled kingside.
Yep, and you can kind of see our development coming together. We're getting the knights on the squares that we like on the 6th rank, and we get our bishops out to nice active squares too. So our development was a little delayed, a little slower, but our pieces are coming into play very quickly. So after queen d5, moving the queen to safety, white could play a move like e3. This is the number one move in the database. And we're going to take the pawn here. And what do we do after they take back? Are we going to do a queen trade?
So we could do the queen trade right away, but in ChessGoals repertoires, we try to avoid the queen trades if it's a boring draw. So our recommendation here is bishop to b4 check. And the reason for this is white has to block this check with a minor piece. They need to put the bishop or the knight back there. Bishop to d2, 9 games out of 11, so this is going to be the most popular. Now we're going to take, and at this point we are going for the queen trade. And the reason for that is there's really nothing better in my opinion. Like we could castle and white could take our queen, or we take the queen first, drawing this knight back. And the reason I went for this is because I feel that we still do have some winning chances with the quick development. So here we're going to recommend a castle. And like other ChessGoals repertoires, we're going to leave you with a plan at the end of every line. What we want to do is knight to c6, bishop to e6, and put a rook onto d8. And I think this is just a nice position. Pretty close to equal, but will give us some decent winning chances. And I'm looking at the engine right now. Black actually has like a 0.1 or 0.2 advantage in all the lines except one, and that's when white immediately queenside castles. So if white queenside castles, we got opposite side castling. That gives us a lot of chances to play for the win. And yeah, I think this is a decent line for us in terms of playing for the win.